Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of The Energy Surrounding You with your girl Pluto from the Pluto and Aquarius platform and one of my faves, Teal, professional astrologer and also queen of the Pluto Aquarius platform. So today we're going to talk about the implications of where one's rising sign falls with respect to the Pluto transit that we will be experiencing for the next 20 years. And as you all know, we really consider this such a huge, important transit, astrologically speaking, that we formed an entire platform around it. Why? Because it's all about transformation, transition, becoming your best self ever in the next 20 years, and how to leverage that energy for you. So in our first episode, which we hosted just a few weeks ago, Karen and I talked about the Pluto and Aquarius transit in general. So please visit that podcast if you haven't heard that one. And this week, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about how the transit will affect you personally based on your rising sign. So on that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen to give us a wonderful explanation of what the rising sign is, how to find it, and why it's so important when it comes to transits like Pluto in Aquarius.
Hi. So everybody has a rising sign, or sometimes you'll hear it be called the ascendant. The rising sign is quite important because it is going to dictate where the signs are going to be located in your house. And the way to know what your rising sign is to know what time you were born. So at the exact second that you came into this world, you can consider your chart like a stamp of the way that the planets were all set up at the exact moment you were born. So that whatever degree was rising over the Eastern Hemisphere is going to be the degree of your ascendant. So for example, I have a 13-degree Virgo ascendant because Virgo was rising over the Eastern Hemisphere at the exact second, February 25th, 1986 at 6:28 p.m. in San Francisco, California. I was born. This means that the rest of the houses go following in a counterclockwise motion from 13 degrees Virgo. So I have Virgo in my first house, but I also have a little bit of Libra in my first house. And then Libra goes into my second house. And then I have a little bit of Scorpio in my second, but then Scorpio is what's considered on the cusp of my third. So whatever sign is starting the house in question is going to be the sign on the cusp. And the sign on the cusp of your first house is your rising sign. So some people don't know the time that they were born. And astrologers really do want to know that time because it's going to help us give you the most accurate reading possible. We can still give you an accurate reading without knowing the rising sign, but it's going to be more, it's not going to be as specific or as maybe tailored to you as you might want, but it'll still be pretty accurate, especially if you're talking to a good astrologer. So
can I ask a question real quick?
Sure, yeah.
Could you just give us a brief high level just understanding of what the difference is between someone's sun sign versus their rising sign? So for example, my sun is Virgo, but my ascendant or my rising is Aquarius. Can you give our audience understanding of the differences between how that impacts you, your personality, and maybe your outlook on life?
Yes. So your sun sign is going to be what sign the sun was in on the day that you were born. So for you, it would have been, I think, September 17th. But then Aquarius was rising over the Eastern Hemisphere. So it's, you are not just one facet of a person. Every single person that we come across in this life is so completely multifaceted. And when you hear astrologers say things like, you are not just your sun sign, this is what they mean. Because while I have a sun in Pisces, because I was born at the end of February, I come off oftentimes very Virgo-like because I have Virgo in my first house. So if you are just meeting someone for the first time, you might think that they're more like their ascendant or rising sign just upon first meeting them. But then as you get to know them on a deeper level, you are going to see that they are probably more like their sun sign. We all have different masks or different faces that we put on, that we show to different aspects of the world. And the rising sign is almost like, it is a facet of who you are, but in a sense, it is kind of like a little bit of a mask too, because if you have a very vastly different sun sign than your rising sign, you might kind of give off the impression of being more like the rising sign. And then in my case, I have, your moon sign comes into play too. And I have my moon in Virgo in the first house. So that almost doubles the idea that maybe I come off a little more Virgoian because of the rising sign and the moon in Virgo. But really deep down, I'm a sensitive little Pisces that tries to run away from everything.
So would you consider this an accurate analogy? Let's say, for example, we have a book. The cover of the book would be your rising or your ascendant, right? What people pick up and they see the first thing. The pages inside the book, the whole book, that would be really your sun sign, right? Everything about it. But the chapters, those would be maybe akin to your houses. And then the transits that we're talking about would be like the characters that kind of get introduced throughout the story. Would that be a good way to kind of look at it?
Yes, that's a great analogy, as in like the rising sign kind of being the cover of the book. That might be what you're first drawn to. Just like if you're attracted to someone, usually you're physically attracted to them first, and then you might get to know them on a deeper level. And then you either become more attracted to them or you're like, ooh, maybe this isn't for me. Same thing with like a book or a movie. You'll hear astrologers comparing it to movies a lot of times too, in the sense, but you can't apply this to a book. And I actually like it for a book better because you get that idea of the cover too, because you can think of the house as almost like the settings for where things are going to take place. And then the planets are almost like kind of these little players or characters that might come through. Or even you can think of it as different plot lines in your own book of life. So you have this cover, maybe the overall theme or plot of the book is your sun sign. Maybe the way your main character reacts to all the different things that happen throughout the plots could be kind of more along the lines of their moon sign. And then everything that kind of happens along the way, the love interest, the maybe discord with other people, you could kind of employ these other planets to maybe be those aspects of the story as well, or even just how your person reacts to the different things that come through in their little plot line of their life.
Oh, I love it. That's great. Thank you. Okay, so going back then to the Pluto and Aquarius transit and how it is going to impact the various rising signs. What is your wisdom on this? I mean, you're just so good at understanding the fine details of these types of things. But yeah, what can you share with us pertaining to the impact on our rising signs, and then therefore, our outlook and the way we project ourselves into the world based on that?
Yes. Yeah, so hopefully since our last podcast, people have had a chance to find out what their rising sign is. If you know what the degree is, even better, because this is a very generalized read. I'm going to go through the rising signs and say where if you have a 0 degrees Aquarius rising, then obviously this Pluto is going to be right on your ascendant or in your first house. But what if you have like a 13 degrees Pluto rising, Aquarius rising, then, Pluto would still be in your, oh my God. Yeah, you still, sorry, I like blanked out for a second. Pluto would still be in your 12th house. So it wouldn't have come into your first house yet. So you might hear me say, it's going to be either in this house or this house. And that depends on your degree. So this is kind of general in this sense. And that's why it's always good if you're really interested in going really deep into your psyche, into your personality, even to your motivations. Why am I the way that I am? Why did I do the things that I've done? And then it would really be good to get a very specific reading for yourself. But, kind of take all of this with a grain of salt, because as it applies to your chart, could be different based on certain degrees, or if there are other planets in your chart that are aspecting Pluto, it can act in a different way than if there was nothing aspecting it, if that makes sense. So just kind of, take this as a general read. But we will go through. So basically those Aquarius risings, like Rachel, we have you having this Pluto in your first house, or like I said, possibly in your 12th. And it depends on the degree rising sign. So if you have Pluto in your 12th house, you are going to be experiencing transformations having to do with perhaps your spirituality. If you have felt like you've been overly self-sacrificing, or maybe playing the martyr in some way, or maybe you flat out have been the martyr in some way, or have had maybe restrictions on yourself, Pluto in your 12th house would indicate a need or a strong desire to break free from these things that maybe have been holding you back, whether they're self-imposed or not. In the 12th house, they tend to be, but a lot of times it's without us realizing it. So you would really feel a need to eliminate things from your life that do not enrich your soul spiritually. Now, if you're having Pluto in your first house, you're going to be experiencing transformations having to do with your whole self. Maybe your physical body in some way could go through a transformation in the next 20 years. Maybe you vastly change your appearance. Or, maybe there's things about, you've been taking a really deep look at yourself, and maybe there's things about yourself that you would like to change or just slowly alter over time. And Pluto in your first house would be excellent for that. Now, if
So
you
would
are
it be accurate to say that it could be in one and then move into the other? So you could be going through 12th house stuff right now, and then a little bit later in the transit, or maybe a lot later in the transit, it moves from your 12th house to your first, and now you're experiencing that in a different way with respect to who you are, after maybe having tied up some stuff related to the 12th house, and now being reflected on who you are as a person, and your outlook and perspective on yourself later on in the transit.
Absolutely. And if that's the case for you, I would expect that when Pluto changes from one house to another, there would probably be some pretty large event happening in your life. It would, of course, depend on what else in your chart is aspecting it, what other transiting planets are aspecting it. But, Pluto changing houses in your chart is, not something that you're just going to kind of coast through and ignore. This is going to be something that is going to cause a very big change in your life. It might not be the best change to start out with, or it could be great. But either way that it starts, the end result is bringing you towards something that is, more suited for you on a deep soul level. A lot of times with Pluto, things get eliminated from our lives, and it's very painful, and you might have to go through a grieving process. And that's why Pluto, rules death, because even if you, like, let's say goodbye to a friendship, you can still mourn it the same way you would mourn a death, because, you can even mourn yourself. Like if you've gone through all this intense 12th house stuff, and maybe because the 12th house has to do with the spirit world, maybe you're doing a lot of things internally, and you're having a lot of kind of spiritual enlightenment, and then it goes into your first house, and then you're like, okay, I need to eliminate stuff from my life now on a more tangible physical level. But maybe the 12th house kind of enabled you to see what needed to be eliminated from your life. And just because things are breaking down or eliminating doesn't mean that it's bad. It's for the purpose of, yeah,
cleaning house is good, baby. Clean it on out. Take out the
yes,
trash. And on its way, I'll say bye, Felicia.
Yes, and exactly. And that's kind of what Pluto is. Whatever house it's in for you right now, you are going to be cleaning house and you're going to be making room for better things to come in.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I feel like this is a theme that we touch on quite a bit in the platform, and we will continue to. Why? Because it's so important. People have a hard time with change. It's difficult, right? We get locked into something, it's consistent, it's comfortable. Um,
Safe.
yeah, and but you know what is a medicine for us at some point in our life can become a poison for us later on in our life. Relationships that were maybe good for us at a certain part time in our life, maybe the season is past and maybe it's time for us to move on, and for those people to move on so we can continue growing and thriving. There's nothing wrong with change. There's nothing wrong with accepting that you've become a different person. There's nothing wrong with accepting new things into your life and letting yourself explore them. And while that might be difficult sometimes, and we can interpret that, okay, I'm going to say that again. We can interpret that as painful. It doesn't mean that it's bad, okay? And once you learn to navigate transition, you understand that all we have are experiences. It's our brain, it's our mind, it's our ego that interprets them as good or bad or anything in between. Once we realize they're just experiences that are meant for us to learn something from, whether we interpret them as good or bad, then we can navigate those experiences much more easily, and we can leverage them and take advantage of them, so that we're like a rocket ship, blast off, right? That's what we want for this transit. So, okay. Sorry, I love
That's
to go on
okay.
side quests. Because I am an Aquarius rising, baby.
Yes, that's why I wanted to do it first. And that's a great side quest. And that's so important to know because our mindset on how we use these energies makes such a huge difference. A little bit later, we're going to talk about some upcoming transits that are going to affect us. And there's one in particular that we talked about before, that Rachel and I discussed before, that depending on how you use that energy can be very great and you can create things out of it, or you can think of it as something that is going to cause you problems. And what way do you want to come into that energy? And that's kind of what you have to ask yourself.
We're going to leave that one as a surprise for later because you're going to love
Yeah,
it.
it's a good
Okay.
one. Okay, so
Okay.
moving
Next
on.
house. We might have to
Yeah,
do like a 3-part episode on it to get through all the signs.
I know. So let's see. I'm going to actually go backwards so that way we're going through the house. So, like I said, if you have an Aquarius rising, it's going to be happening in your first house or maybe 12th. If you are a Capricorn rising, this Pluto transit is going to be happening in your second house or in your first house if you're an earlier degree, or if you're a later degree Capricorn rising. I mean. Now, if so, that means if it's in your second house, you're a Capricorn rising, then that means that this transformation could have to do with your finances. This can be good or it can be a vast learning experience for some people. Pluto in the second house has the ability to have limitless gains. So you can take that information with what you will for that. But you do have to go through the Plutonian process to get this transformation at the highest degree, which means that you are really going to need to kind of we always hear that term get thrown around called shadow work. But what I really mean here is kind of like looking down into the depths of what you value, because that is, people complain about money blockages and things like that. A lot of it is tied to what we value and what we think that we deserve in this lifetime. Because when you start valuing yourself more, you're going to see that the channels of money start opening up more too. And it's not going to be instantaneous. Things take time. And, the second house is a slow moving house. It's Taurus's house, which is the slowest moving sign. It's the idea that money is not just this thing that all of a sudden starts raining on us from nowhere. It's a slow building process that we have to put value into things to get value back. And the main thing we're trying to put value into is ourselves. So for Capricorn risings, there is the need to want to be in control of things, and And you see that even with Aquarius risings too, because both of them have this tie to Saturn. But there's also this idea that you will get karmically rewarded for all the hard work that you're putting in with Saturn too. And Saturn does take time and patience. So thinking about both those energies, the slow moving Taurian energy, and then, the very particular Saturn energy that wants you to work very hard and diligently, those combined, there is the opportunity for great rewards, but you do have to build a little bit or a lot.
Yeah. And I'd like to say this for the record too. It's not selfish to work on yourself. It's not selfish to get to know who you are. It's not selfish to get to know what is valuable to you. People don't seem to think it's selfish to want to earn income and support their family and even build a nice life for themselves, right? That's fine. But it's selfish to want to value yourself and your time and really get to know you. Why? Right? It's not selfish. And going back to what Karen said, it's the key, right? You really want unlimited potential. Money is just scratching the surface. It really is. It's scratching the surface. You want unlimited potential, unlimited income, unlimited anything. The secret is unlocking you. You are the key. And that's what the second house shows. It's earned income, right? Saturnian is the Saturn energy is the earner, right? But what is it asking you to do? To earn who you are as a person, to know who you are as a person, and know thyself, and to work for it, to know that you're valuable. Okay.
Exactly.
The galleries. I'm just gonna stop at the end of every house and give a little commentary from the peanut gallery.
Yeah, no, we love the peanut gallery. So moving on, if you are a Sagittarius rising, it could be Pluto could be in your second house, just like the Capricorn's risings, or it could be in your third house, and more likely it'll probably be in your third house. Third house has to do with communication. So your transformation over the next 20 years is going to have to do with how you communicate. This is an excellent aspect for all the writers out there, all the public speakers, and all the teachers who teach maybe like the younger grades, like if you're in elementary school or even maybe a high school teacher, you could have a transformation in how you teach, or how you, those of us who are in school, like how you learn, because third house is the house of learning. So you could experience a transformation in any of those areas. But also the third house has to do with siblings. You could experience a transformation in how you interact with your siblings, or even maybe, maybe your sibling has a baby or something. And then that could kind of transform your relationship with your sibling. It also rules aunts and uncles and neighbors too. So any of those things could come into play over the next 20 years, or any combination of those things. But that's where Pluto is going to be affecting the area of your life if you are a Sagittarius rising. For example, my daughter is a Sagittarius rising, and she got a baby brother recently. And so it's in her third house, which would actually make perfect sense for this. Now, if you are a Scorpio rising, this will be an interesting one, because Pluto is going to be forming a nice square to your ascendant. If you're a Scorpio rising, it would be interesting to know what any, fixed sign ascendant at 0 degrees is going through right now, because the square means that there are challenges that are being brought about, but that with some effort on your part and problem solving, you can actually render a huge success with a square. It does mean that you do have to kind of, right.
Challenges are just opportunities, baby.
Yes. So if you are a Scorpio rising, Pluto could be in your third house, but it also could be in your fourth house. Now, the fourth house is the house of home and family. So there could be a focus on your family of origin in some way. Maybe there's a transformation happening. Maybe you're moving houses during this time. You could be buying property or maybe changing property in some way. Maybe you buy a property, tear down the house that's there and build it up. That would be pretty much textbook Plutonian action in your fourth house. It also rules your cars. Maybe you're getting a new car. Maybe your car breaks down. You need a new car during this time period when other things get activated in your chart. But there also could be a strong focus on the mother. And maybe you need to pay a little bit more attention to her during this time. Or maybe she's having some kind of transformation in some way.
Yeah,
So that is for the
Oedipus
Scorpio.
type of way, though, people.
What was that?
I said, not an Oedipal type of way, though. That was it.
Right. Yeah.
Joke. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of how that could manifest. Maybe, maybe someone starts dating a cougar or something, maybe. So it's like, you never know how these things can manifest because there could be other things in your chart. Like if like the asteroid of Black Moon Lilith is affecting that, like maybe you could get a nice cougar or something. So you never know. That's why we always want to look at the whole chart. And that's why I say these are very general, because what happens for you specifically would depend on everything that's going on in your chart, all the little things going on and all the bigger picture things too. We kind of assess all of that at once. So now,
I'm really gonna go back now and read Oedipus by Sophocles. See if I can extract these Scorpio energies out. Scorpio in the fourth house energies.
Yeah, all like the secret motivations. So now if you're a Libra rising, you could be having this happen in your fourth house. So all that I just said could be applying to you. Or this could be happening, Scorpio could be happening in your fifth house. So the fifth house is the house of children. It is also the house of pleasure and just of love and fun, of love affairs. So, the Libra risings, we know that they love for things to be balanced and fair. They get along with everybody, or at least they try to, depending on what other factors are going on in their chart. But there could be a major transformation with children. I know Libra risings that have had kids recently, so that would be a major transformation in kids. The next one we're going to go to is Virgo rising, which I have, and I actually have it in my fifth house because of the degree of mine. Yep. But I have a baby, and so I have major transformations in my kind of kid situation. I now have 2 kids instead of 1. So those Libra risings and then some Virgo risings are going to have that in their fifth house. The other things that should be mentioned about the fifth house is also it's the house of creativity. So you could have transformations in creative projects. You could decide to start a new creative project. You could, let's say your whole life you loved painting and you've never had an opportunity to do it. And you have this Pluto in your fifth house. Maybe you decide to start painting and taking it seriously. And maybe you sell a painting and make money, because the fifth house is monetary gains also that are on speculation. That's why we say gambling is ruled by the fifth house. I'm not telling you to go out and gamble right now if you have Pluto in your fifth house, because there could be things in your chart that are upsetting it specifically for you. But I will say that with Pluto there is a opportunity for transformation with fifth house matters. So if you look at your chart, you see a lot of positive money things going on in addition to Pluto in your fifth house. And you have a couple dollars and you want to play the scratcher or whatever, I wouldn't be surprised if you won something. I have, like I said, I have this in my fifth house, and I've been doing some scratchers and I've been winning little things here and there, nothing really big, but it's like, these are kind of the things that maybe, could happen. Maybe it could be big for you. For me, it's just that, there's probably other things getting in the way, other planets upsetting it, but who knows what can happen in 20 years.
Yeah, maybe just consider it to mean take some chances on things in life that bring you pleasure and bring you passion and help you to dive a little bit deeper into the meaning of life,
Absolutely. That's a perfect way to look at it. And something that is really valuable that people in our kind of mundane world don't realize is that your intuition is the most valuable tool you have, really. If something doesn't feel right, then you have to pay attention to that. And a lot of people get into trouble because they know it doesn't feel right and they still do it anyway. Or sometimes you just have that really good feeling and you're like, I'm going to take a chance on something today, and your intuition could be right, and it turns out really good. So you just you know you can do little exercises to test your intuition and things like that, and to strengthen it. Meditation is really good if you want to strengthen your bond with your own intuition. And I'm sure you have so many amazing ways to strengthen yours because your intuition is just so spot on too. And yeah. So what do you like to do to kind of power it up and trust it more?
Honestly, I feel like intuition is besides it just being a skill that can be developed over time, right? Anything that's a skill can be developed over time. You just understand that, just keep working at it. But truthfully, when it comes to intuition, it's just about letting yourself develop a relationship with it, and not doubting it and not worrying about it, right? Like, not getting locked into this idea of, okay, I'm going to use my intuition and see if this thing works out the way that I perceive it to be, and then being let down when it doesn't happen that way, right? Like, a better approach I found is just to let your intuition guide you and not worry about the outcome. And then, you keep that flexibility there. Maybe what you had right in your mind is exactly the way it turns out, or maybe something else comes from it, right? It's not about what you're seeing here, though. It's about what you're feeling here. And when you're letting your intuition guide you, it opens up a lot of opportunities for you that you may not have cognized. And they may not happen right now. It might happen a little bit more in the future. Like, I've had my intuition tell me to go with something that my analytical mind would have just said, no way, that doesn't make any sense at all. And I go with it. I let my heart do the talking. And it's not right away, it's months, or I've even had years later, something. And then I think about it and I think to myself, oh my God, if I hadn't done that one thing that one time and just listen to my intuition, this would never have unfolded. So yeah, just have a love affair with your intuition. That's
Yeah,
for your fifth house, right? Have a love affair with your intuition.
absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that because that is just, it's so helpful for people to kind of get more familiarized with their intuition rather than, think of it as this outside entity from you. It really isn't. It's like fully integrated within
It's
you.
you.
And it's something that is both like a bodily function, it's instinctual, plus it's a spiritual soul aspect of ourselves too. So it like kind of bridges the gap between the two in a way because if animals in the wild didn't have some degree of intuition, how would they escape from predators and things like that, or know where to maybe go hunt if it's the opposite end of that. And so yeah, so thank you for that. It's just very, very valuable stuff.
Yeah, and just remember too, your intuition isn't just speaking to you when something's wrong. Like when you meet someone and you're like, I don't know, there's something off about that person. Um, I think I'm just going to say no to whatever that opportunity is. No, this is something that is with you throughout the whole day. And in general, most of the time, it's a feeling that feels good. It's a beautiful feeling. So, that's why I say fall in love with your intuition. Because even if something doesn't quote unquote come of it, which something will, um, what's wrong with just feeling good and letting yourself being in touch with that part of you that just feels drawn to something and passionate. And then when you develop that, yeah, in these situations that are more like survival or a warning, you definitely know you're way more in touch with that part. And there's a lot less of an internal battle between your frontal lobe and uh, you know, your limbic system intuitive part of yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Sixth house.
Wonderful. All right. So the next rising sign that we have is Virgo rising, like me. So we said that it could be in the fifth house. Like for me, it is in my fifth house. But for some Virgo risings, it's going to be in your sixth house. And that is actually great for Virgo risings because the sixth house is Virgo risings or Virgo's house. It's the house of health, it's the house of daily routine. It's also the house of small animals. So it rules your pets and also like the kind of work you do on a daily basis, as well as any coworkers. So it could manifest in a number of ways for the people who are going to have it in their sixth house. Um, I would definitely advise those people who are having it in their sixth house, and I'm about to gear up to have it in my sixth house too. This is a time where you cannot ignore your health. You absolutely need to be paying attention to your health at this time, especially if you are a Virgo or a Leo rising right now. Just because, and I mean, Virgo risings tend to be pretty, I know, at least with me, like I'm very, very health conscious and very aware of it. But with Pluto there, it's going to make you even more so. Some people may experience health scares that will be for the purpose of like I said, eliminating any bad habits that you might have would be really good during this time. Maybe you just feel compelled to quit some bad habits that you have, or maybe you've been, even something like I've been eating too much sugar, like you could decide to cut down on sugar, cut down on caffeine. All of those would fall into this Pluto, this transformation in your house of health. Our pets could need our attention this time. Some people could be bringing new pets into their home during this time. And this is over the next 20 years, of course. So, of course, this might happen for quite a few people. Also, your coworker situation at work could change, or just something vastly alters your daily routine. As a Virgo rising, I can attest to the fact that I love my daily routine. I am all about the routine every day and getting kind of lost in my daily routine. And then, I have this baby that is definitely I'm going to have to be altering my routine as I go. So it can pop up in any of those ways for you. Now, the Leo risings, you could be having this in the sixth house. Again, pay attention to your health, watch your pets, all that fun stuff. But some Leo risings could be having this in your seventh house. The seventh house is the house of relationships. You are going to be experiencing transformations in your relationships. If you are married, the transformation could be occurring in your marriage. Marriages could break down during this time. You could be building up your marriage stronger than it was before, or you could decide that it's time to walk away. Either one of those scenarios is possible. There's also the possibility of lawsuits when the seventh house is involved. So Pluto, there could be a contract that changes your life. There could be a contract that breaks down your whole life, or even a lawsuit could apply to that too. But for most people, it'll probably be in the area of relationships, reevaluating marriages and commitments that you might have in your life.
Yeah, just remember that whatever the transformation is in any house, I think the sixth and seventh houses are really important. The sixth being the house of self-care, the seventh being the house of significant relationships. If you just keep in mind that whatever the transformation is, the transition is, the right way through it is the one that's for your higher purpose. Okay. That will take a lot of conflict out of those situations, right? And this goes back to the intuition. What's your intuition saying about where the benefit is to you and your true purpose? And that can make things go so much easier if you're moving from one thing to the next, or even in terms of strengthening relationships, taking it to the next level, breaking free of fears that may have held you back in the past, from letting yourself go and just really thriving in that beautiful space that can come from having a meaningful relationship with yourself, i.e. sixth house, or with someone else, i.e. seventh house.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful way to put it. So the next rising sign is Cancer. And so Cancer risings could be having this same thing we just talked about. Pluto could be in your seventh house and everything we just discussed, or it could be happening in your eighth house. Now, the eighth house is one of those very broad houses where it does cover quite a lot of things. So, those of us that are going to be having this Pluto transiting through your eighth or even 12th house are going to have pretty dynamic experiences, I would think, just because the houses are so dynamic with everything that they cover. And if you are a Cancer rising or a Gemini rising or a Aquarius or Pisces rising, I would really look into the house that Pluto is going to be in for you, because you can really do a deep dive into everything the eighth house covers, everything the 12th house covers, and see how these things are manifesting in your life in all these kind of maybe little ways, but also bigger ways too. So, you know, without really sugarcoating anything, those people who do have Pluto transiting through their eighth house, you know, the Cancer risings, the Gemini risings, there are going to be some, you know, potentially heavy lessons having to do with death, because the eighth house rules death, the Pluto rules death. And so when you get kind of this double theme of death, I'm not, you know, it's not making any predictions about you or anyone around you. It's just that you could experience that theme. So it doesn't mean that people could be, you could experience maybe the loss of a animal in your life, or maybe you just experience death up close. Maybe you are a doctor or a paramedic or something, and you have maybe just strange encounters with death or something like. So it doesn't have to be like everyone's going to die because you have this. It's going to be more like the lessons that you are going to be experiencing are going to be around themes like this. And death doesn't always mean a physical death, because the eighth house also rules sex. And sex is this idea of transformation. And it's believed that at kind of the climax of sex, that it's almost like this, it's almost like a death that kind of occurs. It gets compared to that a lot. So, you know, the main themes that you could be experiencing with your, if you're the Cancer risings or the Gemini risings, death, transformation, people that you've had maybe really, really deep relationships with. Someone could come into your life that you connect with on a deeper level than you ever have with anyone before. Because the seventh house are important relationships in our life. It's also like business relationships, like even like open enemies, people that like, you know, that you kind of you know, have a rivalry with or whatever. That's seventh house. Eighth house are the people who like you really consider your soulmates, the people who understand you at a depth and level that nobody else in your life does. So with Pluto there could be, you know, transformations with relationships like that. Some people maybe leave that were that for you before, and maybe someone new comes in who can fill that role to connect with you on that deep level. There's also this idea of inheritance. I can't rule out the idea that the Cancer and Gemini risings, if this is happening in your eighth house, there is the potential to receive an inheritance that just completely changes your life. I'm not saying for sure that will happen for you, because of course there's other things involved, but the energies could be there for that to happen if, you know, if the rest of your chart kind of agrees with that.
Manifest it. Just go for it.
Yeah. But I mean, but you know what has to happen in order for you to get an inheritance? Someone has to die. So, you know, so there's kind of that flip side with it too.
You just have somebody who just loves you from a distance. Like, I see you and I feel what you're doing and I want to support you. Have some money.
Yeah. Or like maybe it was like, you know, sometimes we know it's time, and let's say that, you know, it's, you know, that it's someone in your life's time to go, and then you find out that they have left you with something. But it can go the other way too. If there's something in your in your natal chart that shows that maybe you get a bunch of stuff dumped on you, that now you have to deal with all this stuff that this person had. Or even maybe you find it like maybe you thought you were getting something in a will, finds out you don't. Or the other possibility is you could be looking at your own mortality, and maybe you want to get yourself together and get, you know, maybe like some legal help with, you know, getting your children set up, or getting, you know, if you don't have children, the loved ones, who do you want to take care of what when you're gone? So all those things could be of importance. But like I said, the eighth house is a very deep house. And this is just a generalized look at what it covers. there could be a lot of other things that it could cover too for you, that would fit with that eighth house kind of transformative theme. It also covers things like the occult. So people who are interested in occult matters, kind of uncovering the deep truths of the universe, having Pluto there would really give you some good energies to dive really, really deep into your psyche, into esoteric topics. Whether you're an occultist or not, you could just have an interest in kind of just going deeper into topics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's my fave house. Full of
Yeah,
design.
it's a great house. I have my North Node in the eighth house, so it's been fun kind of reaching that point. Now, so for the Gemini risings, we do have, you could have this in your eighth house, but you could also have it in your ninth house. And so the Gemini risings and then some Taurus risings will have it in their ninth house. The ninth house is the house of philosophy, of higher learning. So maybe some people want to do, maybe they want to go to a specialized school or a trade school. Maybe you want to go back and get your PhD during this time. Maybe you are a teacher because the ninth house is the house of teachers and even more specifically of teachers that do specific topics. So like, that's like if you go back and get a master's or a PhD, maybe you decide you want to teach at university or you want to go back to university, or maybe you're just into studying philosophy more. Or the ninth house is also the house of travel, foreign languages, and foreign places. You could decide that you want to learn a foreign language. You could decide you want to travel, and it has a complete transformative effect on your life. You could decide that you want to pick up and move to a foreign country or a foreign place, or maybe, yeah, just learn the language, go move out there. All of those things could be possible for the Pluto in the ninth house people, which are the Cancer, or yeah, no, Gemini and Taurus risings.
I got Pluto natally in my ninth house.
Oh, wow.
So now you know.
Yeah. And the ninth house does also cover astrology too, because that's a form of higher learning. So, if this kind of stuff interests you and you're one of those Gemini or Taurus risings, maybe you want to learn more astrology. And in which case, we're going to have a lot more good stuff for you coming up. And now we're getting on the last few here. So for the Taurus risings and then some Aries risings, you'll be having Pluto in your 10th house of career and public image. There could be some implications with maybe your father too, or father figures or authority figures or bosses in your life. Maybe you get a new boss, maybe you become a boss, which is awesome. It's that major boss energy. Or maybe there's a transformation in your how you're viewed in your community, or like I say, your public image. Maybe you become internet famous. Maybe you just really just have leaps and bounds in your career, or maybe you decide to completely quit one career and start from the bare bones and move up in a new career. Those things would be possible for the Taurus and Aries risings. And then the other Aries risings and then some Pisces risings will have it in their 11th house. So the 11th house is the house of friends, groups and organizations, but also hopes and wishes. And it also covers like technology and social media. So, and also the 11th house, a lot of people don't realize has to do with fame too. So the 10th house is kind of fame we think of, or a public image or reputation. But the 11th house, some people's hopes and wishes are to be famous. And that's why sometimes you'll see a lot of celebrities with their a lot of stuff going on in the 11th house too. The 11th house is also is really, really big money also. It's money that has been really, really built up. And because that kind of falls into the idea of hopes and wishes too. But also, like I said, friends and groups and organizations. So those that have the Aries rising, the later degree Aries rising, or the Pisces rising, that they're going to experience it, maybe transformations with their friends, any groups or organizations you belong to. Maybe you decide to take on a leadership role. Maybe you decide to step back. Or maybe you're just more committed to working towards your goals. And maybe that means that you're going to eliminate everything in your life that was standing in the way of that before. But that's, I mean, I would think that would be a pretty fortunate placement because the 11th house is just this, you know, amazing house of possibilities. And that's what Aquarius is too.
Well, let's just be honest. Any placement that you have with in terms of your Pluto is a beneficent placement for you, okay? Because it's about empowerment. And Aquarius, and it's transiting through Aquarius. Aquarius is about breaking free of things that are holding you back, breaking free of things that are enslaving your heart and your mind. And Pluto is that planet of plutonic wealth, of ultimate wealth. So, you know, having it in your 10th house, having it in your 11th house, those are incredibly empowering with respect to, you know, projecting things outward. But that doesn't mean that, you know, that's not equally as, they're not equally as powerful in the other houses. The theme to understand here when in terms of your rising sign is what is it you need to leave behind? What is not serving you? We're talking about your true self here, okay? What's not serving your true self in that area, okay? In that house, you know, your family, your friends, your how you think about things deeply, deep relationships, you know, whatever the house is that your rising sign is associated with, you know, what is it that you need to leave behind that's not empowering who you truly are in that space, that new space that's created when you shed, when you let things go. Now you have space, right? Space to create new things, to bring in new stuff, your true will, your true power. Remember, Pluto is the planet of power, okay? And I'm not talking about this little egotistical power. I'm talking about real power, okay? And this is one of the reasons why we have a whole platform about this. 20 years you have the opportunity to harness your true power. What could you do after that? If you spend the next 20 years harnessing your true power, what can you do after that? And just remember, Pluto isn't staying in one house, okay? It's moving. That means you have lots of opportunities. You know, Pluto's a very slow planet, but, you know, we'll talk about this in future episodes. You know, where's Pluto now? Where is it going to be, right? Because you want to think about the future too. If it's, you know, if you're working in second house stuff and it's going to move over into third house stuff, you know, you want to think about the future. I want to empower myself here in the themes of the second house. By the time I move into third house opportunities, I'm ready to go, right? We want you to set your life up for success every single day now and in the future. So I just wanted to say, Karen, your description of the houses, really wonderful. I really appreciate it. You know, there's always so many general descriptions of things. But I feel like hearing you say it and go over it and give some examples of things, you know, life experiences that, you know, one could to use to understand those energies is really, really helpful, especially with some things that might, in my opinion, be very vague for some people, you know, like occult. What does occult mean? Oh, it means witchcraft, secret stuff. Yeah, not necessarily means secret knowledge, secret wisdom, right? Hearing you talk about that important fourth house stuff, I never felt like I really grasped it, right? But to, you know, I mean, I understood, but I don't have a lot going on in my fourth house. So it wasn't anything that really ever touched me deeply. So hearing you go over those themes really helped me to understand, you know, what types of processes somebody could really be going through. And honestly, you know, I feel like the science, yes, I'm calling it a science, okay? And I have a PhD in bioengineering, so I'm not a flake about it. The science of astrology isn't just a benefit for you to know yourself, right? But also to help you understand the people in your life, right? Understand how they communicate, understand what's important to them. You can go very, very deep with it, but taking that opportunity at some point to really understand how you connect with others, how they connect with you, what challenges and opportunities somebody may be experiencing can help you bring a lot of depth to your life. So I hope we can touch on that stuff a little bit more later too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so for the Pisces rising, and then for some of the Aquarius risings, we've made it all the way back to the top of the list where we're now talking about the last two rising signs. So those Pisces risings and some Aquarius risings, you are going to be having Pluto in either in your what 12th house. Some Pisces risings might have it in your 11th house, as I mentioned, but some Pisces will have it in their 12th house. And so I kind of mentioned it actually at the very beginning of the video that if it is in your 12th house, that you're going to be experiencing these transformations in probably mostly your spirituality. But I did mention that the 12th house is a very multifaceted house and there's a lot going on, like with the 8th house. And it's funny because both those houses are water houses. And so if you think about kind of fluidity of water and how water kind of, you know, expands to fill up a space, it's almost like you can kind of, it explains in your head kind of why maybe these things are a little bit more broad. Even with the 4th house too, as you just mentioned, it does cover quite a lot too, maybe not as much as the 8th and 12th, but those water houses do kind of, I guess maybe because water kind of branches out and it absorbs into things. And so if you think about the element, it kind of makes sense. But the 12th house covers, you know, we think of it as spirituality, but it also is the house of, you know, for lack of a better term, self-imprisonment. And what that means is that how it's sometimes when we have 12th house stuff going on, it's we can look at, you know, how have, you know, has my free will or maybe the choices that I've made brought me to this point? How have I been consciously or subconsciously maybe putting myself in situations where I might feel imprisoned or I feel like something is maybe just beyond the veil for me? Also, the 12th house tends to be kind of overly self-sacrificing. Have I sacrificed to the point of my own detriment? And maybe how do I kind of bring that back to myself? And then that it's that idea of kind of phasing into this first house matters, that your spirituality is helping you to know yourself. And you don't have to go about it any other way except the way that you resonate with. So however, you know, you connect with yourself spiritually, however you connect to the divine, are going to be things that help you realize patterns in your life that whether you do it on purpose or not, and most of the time it's not purposeful. How have I self-imprisoned myself? How have I been overly self-sacrificing? How have I maybe been the martyr, whether I fully am the martyr or whether I'm playing that? And then, you know, kind of stepping away from these things and not looking at it in an egoic way, but looking at it as a way to learn yourself, because you know, we self-sacrifice as it's a selfless measure to do that. So it's kind of giving away from ourselves. And that's kind of something that the 12th house in Pisces deals with a lot. It's like almost generosity to the point of, you know, you give away so much that you don't leave much for yourself. And as a Pisces sun, and I have 4 planets in Pisces, it's really, really important. So I would advise this for especially the Pisces risings. You need to set time for yourself. You have to be able to replenish your own energy. So what that means is that if you need to do some self-care type stuff, if you need to just be alone, not have anyone talk to you for an hour, I know that's kind of what I need. I need alone time a lot. So those kinds of things are going to be really important for 12th house energies. And if you know that you have the sun in the 12th house, regardless of what sign it's in, a lot of your big lessons are going to have to do with self-sacrifice and what are you giving to yourself versus what are you giving to others? How do you balance that? Because, you know, Pisces does have a lot to do with balance. It's 2 fish swimming in opposite directions. And Pisces is the sign that rules the 12th house. So, you know, how can we get, you know, the kind of yin yang, the fish swimming in this balanced position where everybody is getting what they need on a physical and spiritual level, but without somebody self-sacrificing to the point of, you know, completely depleting themselves. So that would be something to remember if you have Pluto in this position. And you could decide with this energy that, you know, you are going to set some major boundaries. People with Piscean energy, sun in the 12th house, a lot of their big lessons have to do with setting boundaries. So with Pluto there, We talked about it having this inherent power. It's this powerful planet and it helps you step into your own power. So with it there, you could be taking your power back in a spiritual sense or in a kind of maybe generous sense too. Make sure that you're giving enough to yourself too.
Yes, and please remember it's okay to have boundaries. And yes, people will push back on that. People don't like it when you set boundaries for yourself when you haven't done that before. But it is important and it's okay. If you need to hear it, it's okay. And, you know, I just wanted to say one thing in response to what you just mentioned about the 12th house energies. I, having Aquarius rising in my 12th house right now, have already experienced some of these themes. And for me, something that helped bring me through some of these lessons pertaining to self-sacrifice and self-imprisonment because of it, right? Giving so much of myself that there was almost nothing left was coming to the understanding of when is the sacrifice meaningful and when is it not? And coming to the understanding that just blanket sacrificing is not necessarily always the most valuable choice or what you should do, even if you feel like it's the selfless thing to do. It's not necessarily the balanced, meaningful or valuable thing to do. Coming into some clarity with that helped me out a lot. So I really thank you for that, Karen. And I know we have gone probably a little over an hour. So is there anything, any final thoughts you want to leave us with today? And also let you give us a little teaser for the next time around.
Yeah, well, you know, just kind of in closing, regardless of what your rising sign is, you know, everybody as a collective is going through this kind of massive transformation. We're all experiencing this on, you know, a macrocosmic level in the world around us, and then also in our kind of in our microcosmic level, you know, within us too, and in our immediate sphere. And so you know, I do say this a lot, but it's like it's so important to just kind of give people grace during this time. You know, these energies are, you know, especially with Pluto, they can be quite heavy. People are going through a lot of transformations. You don't know where in their life it's happening. And so, you know, just, you know, as you're kind of going through everything that you're going through with yourself too, you know, stay true to yourself, but also, you know, give people a little bit of grace and patience too that are in your life, because you don't know how intense these energies are for them as well. And just a little teaser, as you know, maybe the next video that we'll get into, we're going to talk about in the month of February, we have this amazing stellium in Aquarius. And in astrology, a stellium is when you have 3 or more planets kind of clustered together in what we call a conjunction. And so what is going to be happening is it's not going to be like a really tight conjunction, but we are going to be having all these planets in Aquarius all at once. And it's already started happening on the 5th with Mercury going into Aquarius. So if you think back to February 5th, or actually, no, wait, February 5th hasn't happened yet. Sorry, we probably have to cut that out.
That's
Never
okay.
mind. We have to cut out
We're
that whole
going
part.
back to the future, baby.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought it was the 10th or the 11th, but it's only the 4th. Okay, so we'll cut all of that. I don't know where to cut back. Okay, so I'll just start with the teaser again. Okay, so just a little teaser for our next video. We're going to be talking about a bunch of planets are going to be all kind of clustered together on what we call a stellium in Aquarius this month in February. So we're going to be having Mercury, Mars, and Venus all coming up on Pluto, and then they're all going to be in Aquarius for a while. So we'll be talking about what that means for us. We're going to be feeling a lot of really kind of high-minded, but also sometimes semi-chaotic Aquarius energy. So don't be surprised if February, it seems kind of airy, if it seems like things are happening really fast, or maybe things advance really fast, or if you know, just Aquarius is very innovative and progressive, and so we could see kind of a lot of that happening in February. And this could be kind of this planetary way of kind of giving like almost a little kind of like burst underneath the tush of kind of everyone in the world with this Aquarius, very strong air energy coming in. So that is going to kind of kick off on the 5th of February with Mercury going into Aquarius, but then we're also going to be having Mars and Venus going into Aquarius too. And so that'll all be fun. Especially when Mars hits Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius, that is a potentially volatile aspect that we will delve more into a little bit later. And we'll see what that could mean for you.
We're going to tell you how to have fun with it.
Yes, there's a very, very fun way this can be utilized.
Because Pluto loves to leverage energy for good stuff, baby. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much, Karen. Yeah, I look forward to our next episode. And I hope you have a beautiful day. And we will see you later. Everyone, we love you so much. May you enjoy the energies that surround you and take advantage of all the goodness that life has coming your way. Mwah. We'll see you later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.